Hey everyone, here's something wild. Only 19% of you watching are actually subscribed. If you're enjoying what we do here, smashing that subscribe button is totally free. And hey, you can always unsubscribe if you change your mind. Your support means everything as we push toward 10k subscribers by next year. Now, let's jump into today's video. The morning sun cast long shadows across the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, its golden rays glinting off the sleek hull of humanity's most ambitious venture yet, the Odyssey. Commander Jack Thompson stood at the base of the towering spacecraft, his weathered hand resting against its cool metal surface. 25 years of training had led to this moment, yet nothing could have truly prepared him for the weight of responsibility that now pressed upon his shoulders. "Pre-flight checks complete, Commander," called Lisa Nakamura's steady voice through his earpiece. As the mission's pilot, her expertise in handling the Odyssey's revolutionary propulsion system had earned her a reputation for unwavering precision. Through the spacecraft's viewport, he could see her methodically, working through the final system diagnostics, her movements as practiced as a surgeon's. Dr. Alex Novak and Emma Reeves, the mission specialists, were already aboard, securing their research equipment for launch. Their complementary expertise, Alex in xenobiology and Emma in atmospheric sciences, had made them the natural choices for studying what might be humanity's first encounter with a truly Earth-like exoplanet. Through months of training simulations, their professional respect had evolved into a deep friendship, punctuated by fierce debates about what they might discover. Michael Russo, the payload specialist, responsible for the mission's cutting-edge scanning technology, triple-checked the security of his precious instruments. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, but his eyes kept darting to the sky, as if already imagining the mysteries that awaited them in the vast expanse of space. Beside him, Olivia Patel, the team's expert in communications and data analysis, made final adjustments to their long-range transmission equipment, her usual quiet demeanor replaced by barely contained excitement. T-minus 60 minutes to launch, announced Mission Control, their voices carrying the weight of history in the making. The atmosphere in the spacecraft crackled with anticipation as the crew completed their final preparations. Each member had left behind families, friends, and the comfort of Earth for a mission that would take them farther from home than any human had ever ventured. Commander Thompson took his position in the command module, his fingers running over the familiar controls. The interior of the Odyssey hummed with life, the gentle whir of air circulation systems, the soft beeping of monitoring equipment, and the low murmur of his crew's voices as they performed their final checks. Through the viewport, he could see the crowd gathering at the observation area, their faces turned upward in anticipation. "All systems go," reported Lisa, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of the moment. One by one, each crew member confirmed their readiness. Environmental systems check. Navigation aligned. Communications operational. Payload secure. Data systems nominal. The final minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Thompson's mind wandered to the countless simulations, the years of preparation, the rigorous selection process that had brought them together. Each member of his crew represented the pinnacle of human achievement in their respective fields, yet they were about to venture into territory where all their expertise might prove insufficient. T-minus 10 seconds came the call from Mission Control. The Odyssey's engines began their initial power-up sequence, a deep rumble that Thompson felt in his bones. Through the viewport, he watched as the service arms slowly retracted from the spacecraft's hull. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The launch itself was a symphony of controlled power. The Odyssey's revolutionary engines ignited with a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of Earth itself. G-forces pressed them back into their seats as the spacecraft broke free from the embrace of gravity, piercing through layers of atmosphere, like an arrow of human ambition shot into the cosmos. As the blue sky gradually darkened to the infinite black of space, Thompson felt a profound sense of disconnect from everything he had ever known. The Earth, their beautiful home, began to shrink beneath them, transforming from a world of infinite detail into a precious blue marble suspended in the void. "Trajectory nominal," reported Lisa, her voice tight with concentration as she guided their ascent. "First stage separation complete." The Odyssey responded to her commands with fluid grace, its revolutionary propulsion system performing exactly as designed. Minutes stretched into hours as they established their initial orbit and began preparations for their long journey. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, each person moving through their assigned tasks with the precision of a well-oiled machine. Yet beneath their professional facades, each felt the weight of history pressing upon them. They were no longer just 6 individuals. They were humanity's ambassadors to the unknown. As Earth receded behind them and the vast expanse of space opened up before them, Commander Thompson gathered his crew for their first meal together in space. It was a tradition he had insisted upon, a moment to pause and acknowledge the magnitude of what they were undertaking. "To the Odyssey," he proposed, raising a pouch of rehydrated orange juice, "and to whatever awaits us among the stars." The crew touched their drinks together in the zero-gravity environment, watching as tiny droplets floated away from their containers like minuscule planets in orbit. None of them could have known then just how prophetic that simple toast would prove to be, or the extraordinary challenges that awaited them in the vast unknown. The days aboard the Odyssey settled into a rhythm as familiar as Earth's tides, yet utterly alien in its execution. Zero gravity transformed every mundane task into a delicate ballet, from morning hygiene routines to the careful preparation of their nutrient-dense meals. Commander Thompson maintained a strict schedule, knowing that structure would be their anchor in the vast emptiness of space. Dr. Alex Novak spent countless hours in the ship's compact laboratory, studying the preliminary data about their destination. The planet, designated Kepler 789e, had captured the imagination of astronomers worldwide with its remarkably Earth-like characteristics. Through the powerful telescope array mounted on the Odyssey's hull, he could already make out its blue-tinged atmosphere, a sight that sent shivers of excitement down his spine. Emma Reeves worked alongside him, her expertise in atmospheric sciences complementing his biological focus. Together, they developed increasingly complex models of what they might find on the surface. "Look at these spectral readings," she would often say, pointing to data streams that hinted at familiar chemical compositions. "It's almost too perfect." Lisa Nakamura maintained their course with unwavering precision, making minute adjustments to their trajectory as they hurtled through the solar system at unprecedented speeds. The Odyssey's revolutionary propulsion system performed flawlessly, though she sometimes caught herself holding her breath during the regular diagnostic checks, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. Michael Russo and Olivia Patel worked in tandem, ensuring their communication links with Earth remained stable and their vast array of scientific instruments continued to function properly. The data they collected during their journey would keep Earth scientists busy for decades, regardless of what they found at their destination. But as the weeks stretched into months, subtle changes began to creep into their well-ordered world. It started with small things. Equipment that had been securely stored would be found floating free in the morning, despite multiple checks of their restraints. Communication delays with Earth grew longer than their calculations predicted, and then there were the sounds. "Did anyone else hear that?" Olivia asked one night during their communal dinner. The crew had paused, floating in the mess area, their food pouches momentarily forgotten. In the silence that followed, they all heard it, a faint whisper that seemed to echo through the ship's corridors, like distant voices carrying on a conversation just beyond the range of comprehension. Commander Thompson ordered a complete diagnostic of the ship's systems, but everything checked out perfectly. "It's probably just the ship settling," he suggested, though his eyes betrayed his uncertainty. Metal expands and contracts in space. But the incidents continued and escalated. One morning, Lisa found her personal tablet displaying star charts she hadn't accessed, showing configurations that shouldn't have been possible from their location. Alex's carefully cultured bacterial samples showed strange growth patterns that defied his understanding of cellular biology. Emma's atmospheric analysis programs began producing readings that suggested they were simultaneously in deep space and on Earth's surface. The crew began to feel a subtle tension, an underlying current of unease that contrasted sharply with their initial excitement. During their daily video logs, each tried to maintain a professional demeanour, but their reports began to reflect their growing concern. Day 147, Commander Thompson recorded in his personal log. "The crew remains focused on their duties, but I can't shake the feeling that something's not right. The Odyssey itself seems to be changing. I've noticed subtle differences in the layout of corridors I've walked 100 times. Equipment appears in places where it shouldn't be, only to return to its proper location when checked again. I haven't shared these observations with the crew yet. They're dealing with enough stress as it is." During their regular communication windows with Earth, they maintained a facade of normalcy. Mission Control didn't need to know about the whispers in the night, or the way the ship's shadows sometimes seemed to move independently of their light sources. They were professionals after all, and psychological stress was an expected part of long-term space missions. But then came the night that changed everything. The crew had just finished their evening meal when all systems simultaneously malfunctioned. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into complete darkness save for the distant starlight streaming through the viewports. In that moment of darkness, each crew member saw something different, reflections that didn't match their movements, glimpses of familiar faces with unfamiliar expressions, and in the stars outside, patterns that seemed to form themselves into impossible geometric shapes. The emergency systems kicked in after exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds, a duration that would later prove significant. As light returned to the Odyssey, the crew found themselves changed. They had experienced something beyond their training, beyond their science, beyond their understanding of reality itself. "We need to talk about what just happened," Emma said, her voice steady, despite her pale complexion. The others nodded, and for the first time they openly discussed their individual experiences, finding disturbing parallels in their separate accounts. What they couldn't have known then was that this incident marked the beginning of their true journey, not just through space, but through the very nature of reality itself. As they continued their approach to Kepler 789e, the boundary between the familiar and the impossible would continue to blur, testing not just their training and their courage, but their very understanding of what it meant to be human. The first sight of Kepler 789e's surface left the crew of the Odyssey speechless. Through the ship's viewports, they watched as clouds parted to reveal continents and oceans in patterns that sent a collective shiver down their spines. It wasn't just that the planet was Earth-like, it was identical to Earth, down to the familiar shapes of its land masses. "This is impossible," Dr. Alex Novak whispered, his scientific training warring with the evidence before his eyes. He frantically compared their visual data with Earth's geographical records, finding match after perfect match. The statistical probability of this, it's essentially zero. Commander Thompson ordered a complete orbital survey before attempting any landing. For 3 days, the Odyssey circled the planet, its sensors gathering data that only deepened the mystery. The atmosphere showed the exact same composition as Earth's. The magnetic field matched Earth's precisely. Even the weather patterns mirrored those back home. Lisa Nakamura, usually the most composed of the crew, found her hands shaking as she conducted detailed scans of the surface. "Commander," she called out, her voice tight with controlled emotion, "I'm picking up signs of civilization. Cities, roads, infrastructure, all exactly where they should be. It's like looking at Earth through a mirror." The decision to land came after hours of heated debate. Mission protocols hadn't prepared them for anything like this. Half the crew argued for immediate return to Earth, while others insisted that they had a scientific obligation to investigate. In the end, Commander Thompson made the call. "We didn't come all this way to turn back now," he announced, his voice firm despite his own misgivings. "We'll land at the designated site, but with maximum precautions." They chose a landing zone in what appeared to be North America, in a region corresponding to the Nevada desert. The descent was perfect. Too perfect, as Lisa would later note in her log. The Odyssey's systems functioned with a precision that seemed almost predetermined, as if the ship itself knew exactly where it needed to be. The first step onto the planet's surface was taken by Commander Thompson, following protocol. The crunch of his boot on the desert soil sent an echo through the comm system that seemed to linger longer than it should have. "Surface conditions exactly match our simulations," he reported, his training taking over despite the surreal situation. "Gravity nominal. Air pressure perfect." One by one, the crew emerged from the Odyssey, their boots leaving prints in the dust that looked exactly like the ones they practiced making in training. The air was breathable. Analysis confirmed it was identical to Earth's atmosphere, but they maintained their suit integrity as a precaution. It was Dr. Novak who first noticed the vegetation. What should have been desert scrubland matched Earth's Nevada precisely, down to the specific species of sage and creosote bush. He collected samples with trembling hands, each specimen exactly matching Earth's biological database. Emma Reeves conducted atmospheric readings that defied explanation. "The air isn't just similar to Earth's," she reported. "It's identical. Not just in composition, but in the specific ratios of isotopes. It's as if we never left home." The discovery of the first building nearly broke their collective composure. It stood exactly where an abandoned gas station should have been, according to their Earth maps. Every detail was perfect. The faded advertisements, the rust patterns on the pumps, even the graffiti on the back wall. Michael Russo's scanning equipment revealed something even more disturbing. "These structures aren't just similar to Earth's," he reported, his voice shaking. "They're quantum level identical. It's as if someone took a perfect three-dimensional snapshot of Earth and reproduced it here." Olivia Patel worked frantically to document everything, her communications equipment capturing terabytes of data that seemed to defy the very laws of probability. "Even the dust patterns are identical," she noted, her scientific detachment starting to crack. "This isn't just a copy, it's a perfect replica." As they ventured further from the landing site, the crew's initial awe gave way to a deep, unsettling fear. Everything was too perfect, too precise. Nature didn't work this way. Reality didn't work this way. They found roads leading exactly where they should, power lines running to nowhere, and signs advertising businesses that should have been thousands of light years away. But something was missing. Something so fundamental that its absence seemed to create a physical pressure in the air around them. Where is everyone? Emma finally voiced the question they'd all been thinking. The world around them was complete in every detail except one. There were no people, no animals, no movement, except what they themselves created. As the alien sun began to set, following exactly the same arc that Earth's sun would have at these coordinates, Commander Thompson made another discovery that would change everything. In the growing darkness, he spotted lights in the distance, city lights, twinkling exactly where Las Vegas should have been. "We need to investigate," he declared. though his voice carried a note of uncertainty that his crew had never heard before. "But we go in fully armed and fully alert. Something created this place, and I have a feeling we're about to find out why." What they couldn't have known, as they prepared for their journey to the mysterious city, was that they were about to encounter something far more terrifying than an empty world. They were about to come face to face with themselves, and in doing so, confront questions about the nature of reality and identity that would shake the very foundations of their understanding of existence. The approach to the illuminated city tested every protocol in their training. Commander Thompson led the team in their rover, its wheels leaving tracks in the desert sand that seemed to glow faintly in the gathering darkness. The lights of what appeared to be Las Vegas grew larger, more defined, yet somehow wrong in ways that defied easy description. "Energy signatures are identical to Earth's power grid," Michael reported from his instrument panel. "But there's something else. Some kind of underlying frequency I can't identify." The city's outskirts emerged from the darkness like a half-remembered dream. Every building, every street sign, every abandoned car sat exactly where it should be, creating an uncanny valley of familiar architecture devoid of life. The crew's tension mounted as they navigated through empty streets that should have been teeming with tourists and locals. "Look at the billboards," Emma pointed out, her voice barely above a whisper. "The dates. They're today's date, not Earth's today, our today." They parked the rover in what should have been a crowded casino parking lot and proceeded on foot, their footsteps echoing off buildings in ways that seemed to defy acoustic physics. The air had grown thick with anticipation, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The first sign of movement nearly caused Lisa to discharge her weapon. A shadow passed between buildings, human-shaped, purposeful in its movement. Commander Thompson signaled for the team to hold position while he consulted their motion sensors. "Multiple contacts," he reported, his voice steady despite the circumstances, moving in patterns consistent with search protocols, our search protocols. Before they could process this information, a voice called out from behind them, Lisa's voice, though Lisa herself stood frozen beside Commander Thompson. "Drop your weapons and turn around slowly." The crew turned to find themselves staring at themselves. Another Commander Thompson, another Lisa Nakamura, another complete crew of the Odyssey stood facing them, weapons raised, expressions hard and suspicious. The duplicates wore identical spacesuits, carried identical equipment, and moved with identical mannerisms. "This is Commander Jack Thompson of the Earthship Odyssey," both Thompson said simultaneously, then stopped, startled by the synchronicity. The two crews stood facing each other in the empty street, each a perfect mirror of the other. Even their breathing patterns matched, creating an eerie harmony in their helmet radios. "You're the imposters," declared the other Dr. Novak, his face twisted with a mixture of fear and fascination. "We've been here for 3 days conducting our survey. You're some kind of copy." "That's impossible," Emma replied, then watched in horror as her duplicate mouthed the exact same words at the exact same time. The other crew looked battle-worn, their suits showing signs of recent combat. Fresh scorch marks marred their equipment, and their eyes held the haunted look of those who had seen too much. "We've been fighting them for days," the other Commander Thompson said, his weapon never wavering. "The things that live here, the things that copied us, they're getting better at it, more perfect with each iteration." "We haven't seen any other life forms," Olivia protested, only to have her words echoed by her duplicate. "That's what they all say at first," the other Michael responded, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Each copy thinks they're the original. Each copy has the same memories, the same convictions, the same certainty that they're real." The two crews began to circle each other, a deadly dance of identical performers. Each movement was mirrored, each gesture duplicated with perfect precision. Even their thoughts seemed to run in parallel, creating a feedback loop of suspicion and fear. "We can prove we're the originals," both commanders said simultaneously, then stopped, frustrated by their continued synchronicity. The standoff might have continued indefinitely, if not for a new sound that froze both crews in place, the distant roar of engines identical to the Odyssey's launch sequence. Looking up, they watched as another Odyssey descended from the clouds, its landing lights illuminating the empty city. "That's impossible," everyone said at once, their voices blending into a chorus of disbelief. "We disabled our ship's systems." As the new ship disappeared behind the city's skyline, both crews received the same transmission. "This is Commander Jack Thompson of the Earthship Odyssey. We've detected multiple anomalous signatures, consistent with human life forms. Preparing for landing and investigation." The message repeated, then was joined by another, slightly out of sync, then another, and another. Soon the airwaves were filled with overlapping declarations from countless Commander Thompsons, each claiming to be the original, each preparing to investigate the very mystery they themselves were part of. Reality itself seemed to flutter around them like pages in a cosmic book, each page showing the same story with subtle, maddening variations. The empty city suddenly felt very crowded, filled with infinite versions of themselves, all searching for answers, all convinced of their own authenticity. The two crews backed away from each other, weapons still raised, as more identical footsteps echoed through the streets around them. Somewhere in the distance, another rover's engines rumbled to life. Then another, and another. "We need to get back to the ship," both commanders ordered, then stopped, realizing the futility of their words. Which ship? Which crew? Which reality was genuine, and which was the reflection? The answer, they would soon discover, was both more complex and more terrifying than any of them could have imagined. The next 48 hours devolved into a nightmare of recursive identity. More crews appeared, each with their own story, each convinced of their authenticity. The empty city became a maze of mirrors, where every corner held another version of themselves, each slightly different, each adamantly sure they were the originals. Commander Thompson, the first Commander Thompson, or at least the one we've been following, established a base in an abandoned casino. His crew fortified their position while trying to understand the multiplication of their existence. But even this simple act became complicated when three other crews had the exact same idea, choosing the exact same location. "We need to establish some way to differentiate ourselves," Dr. Novak suggested, while simultaneously watching four other versions of himself make the same suggestion in slightly different words. The attempts at identification quickly revealed even more disturbing patterns. Each crew had identical memories up to the moment of landing, but their experiences since then varied in subtle ways. Some had encountered hostile entities in the city's depths. Others had found mysterious technology hidden beneath familiar buildings. Still, others spoke of messages from Earth that none of the others had received. "It's like we're all different versions of the same story," Emma observed, her scientific mind struggling to categorize their situation. "But which version is real?" The confrontations between crews grew more intense as resources became contested. Each group needed supplies. Each needed access to their ships, or what they believed to be their ships, and each was convinced that the others were either sophisticated copies or dangerous imposters. The breaking point came during what should have been a routine supply run. Three different Commander Thompsons encountered each other in what had been a supermarket, each leading their crew in search of the same supplies. The standoff quickly escalated as each group accused the others of being fraudulent. "We can prove we're real," one Thompson declared, his voice sharp with conviction. "We have the original mission parameters, encrypted in our personal data cores." "So do we," the others responded in near unison. When they compared their data, everything matched perfectly, even the private code phrases that were supposed to be known only to the original crew. The tension finally erupted into violence when one of the Michaels noticed something odd about another crew's equipment. "Their quantum signature is slightly out of phase," he reported just before all hell broke loose. The firefight that followed was surreal. Identical crews using identical weapons, taking cover behind identical shelving units. Each person found themselves shooting at their own image, while simultaneously being shot at by other versions of themselves. The chaos was interrupted by a discovery that chilled all versions of the crew to their cores. One of the injured duplicates, a copy of Lisa, wasn't bleeding. Instead, her wound revealed a shifting matrix of light and code, as if her entire being was a sophisticated hologram given physical form. "What are we?" all versions of Lisa asked simultaneously, staring at the impossible wound. The fighting stopped as quickly as it had begun, replaced by a new kind of horror. Each crew began checking themselves for injuries, for proof of their own physicality. But even those who bled red blood couldn't be sure it wasn't just another layer of simulation. Commander Thompson, all versions of him, called for a ceasefire. The crews gathered in the casino's main hall, weapons lowered but not holstered, each person surrounded by multiple versions of themselves. "We need to face the possibility that none of us are who we think we are," one Thompson announced, his words echoed by his duplicates with varying degrees of acceptance. The discussion that followed was unlike any in human history, a debate about the nature of identity and reality conducted by multiple versions of the same people. Each crew shared their experiences since landing, creating a complex tapestry of overlapping narratives. Patterns began to emerge. Each crew's story diverged from the others at specific points, as if reality itself was branching into multiple possibilities. More disturbing were the moments where their stories synchronized, points where all versions of events aligned perfectly, as if the branching realities were being pulled back together by some unseen force. "It's like we're part of an experiment," one of the Emmas suggested, multiple iterations of the same scenario running in parallel. "But who's conducting the experiment?" all versions of Olivia asked. "And what are they looking for?" The answer would come sooner than any of them expected, and from a source none of them could have predicted. As the crews argued and theorized, the casino's massive video screen suddenly flickered to life. Every version of every crew member fell silent as they watched their own faces appear on the screens. Not just the versions present in the room, but countless others, each experiencing slightly different versions of their mission. And then, beneath the cacophony of familiar voices, a new sound emerged. Something alien and vast. Something that spoke directly into their minds in concepts rather than words. The true nature of their situation was about to be revealed, and with it the knowledge that reality, as they understood it, was far more complex and terrifying than any of them had imagined. The alien presence that manifested through the casino's screens defied comprehension. Each crew member experienced it differently, yet somehow identically, a paradox that would have seemed impossible before their arrival on this mirror Earth. The message it conveyed rippled through their collective consciousness, unraveling their understanding of reality like a thread pulled from a fraying tapestry. "Your linear perception is insufficient," the presence communicated, its thoughts manifesting simultaneously in every language the crew members knew, and several they didn't. "We must adjust the parameters." Reality shifted. The casino's walls became fluid, revealing layers upon layers of identical rooms filled with identical crews, all experiencing the same moment from slightly different angles. Time itself seemed to stutter and loop. showing them fragments of their own arrival from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Dr. Novak was the first to notice his hands beginning to blur, not just visually, but conceptually. "Our quantum coherence is breaking down," he announced, watching as his fingers seemed to exist in multiple positions at once. "It's as if we're becoming unstuck from conventional space-time," finished another Novak, his voice overlapping with the first's in a way that suggested they were becoming the same person again, or perhaps had never been separate to begin with. The multiple Emmas began experiencing shared memories that none of them had lived through. "I remember dying on the surface," one reported, her voice shaking. "I remember succeeding in our mission. I remember never leaving Earth. I remember everything that could have happened all at once." Commander Thompson, all versions of him struggled to maintain order as their separate realities began to collapse into each other. The process was neither smooth nor comfortable. Each crew member felt the psychological weight of multiple lifetimes, of experiences crushing in on them, threatening to overwhelm their individual consciousness. "Focus on your core memories," Lisa shouted over the cacophony of overlapping voices. "The launch, our training, everything before we landed here. Those are our anchors to reality." But even these memories began to show signs of manipulation. Within each recollection, they found subtle inconsistencies, planted suggestions, and altered details that suggested their entire mission, perhaps their entire existence, had been carefully orchestrated. The casino's architecture continued to shift around them, revealing impossible geometries and recursive spaces. Corridors led back to themselves after impossible turns. Elevators opened onto floors that existed in multiple times simultaneously, and windows looked out onto versions of the city from different points in history, all empty, all perfect in their replication. Michael's scientific instruments began registering readings that broke their own programming. "The quantum signature of everything around us is breathing," he reported, watching as his equipment cycled through numbers that shouldn't have been possible. "It's like reality itself is pulsing between states of existence." Olivia discovered that her communication equipment was picking up transmissions from Earth, not their Earth, but countless versions of it, each with its own slightly different history. The overlapping messages created a symphony of human communication that spanned all possible versions of their civilization. The crew members who had shown signs of being holograms began to flicker between states of materiality, but so did the supposedly real ones. The distinction between authentic and artificial became meaningless as they all experienced moments of both absolute physicality and complete immateriality. "We're not copies of each other," Emma realized, her voice carrying the weight of profound understanding. "We're quantum superpositions of ourselves. Every possible version of our mission is happening simultaneously, and somehow we've become aware of all of them." The unraveling accelerated. The boundaries between individual crew members began to blur, not just between copies of the same person, but between different crew members entirely. They began to experience each other's thoughts, memories, and emotions as if they were their own. Commander Thompson found himself understanding advanced xenobiology as if he had Dr. Novak's lifetime of study. Lisa could suddenly operate Michael's complex scanning equipment with expert precision. Their individual expertise and experiences were becoming a shared consciousness, suggesting that perhaps they had never been separate individuals at all. The city outside the casino windows began to show its true nature. Behind the perfect replica of Las Vegas, they could now see the underlying structure of reality itself, a vast multidimensional lattice of information and energy that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. "This isn't just a simulation," all versions of Dr. Novak said simultaneously, their voices blending into one. "It's an interface. They've been trying to communicate with us in terms we could understand, but our minds couldn't process the true nature of their existence until now. As if in response to this realization, the alien presence intensified. The message it had been trying to convey began to take shape in their collective consciousness, revealing a truth about the nature of existence that would forever change their understanding of reality, consciousness, and what it truly means to be human. The truth, when it finally crystallized in their collective consciousness, was both simpler and more complex than anything they could have imagined. The alien presence, which now permeated every atom of their perceived reality, revealed itself not as a single entity, but as the fabric of consciousness itself. We are the observers, it communicated, the concept unfolding in their minds like a flower, blooming in infinite dimensions. We are the force that collapses quantum probability into experienced reality. We are the reason existence takes the form that conscious beings perceive. Through their merged consciousness, the crew began to understand. The aliens hadn't created a simulation. They had revealed the true nature of reality itself. Every possible version of every possible event existed simultaneously in a vast quantum superposition, and consciousness was the force that selected and experienced particular versions of these infinite possibilities. Your mission, the presence explained, was never about exploring a distant planet. It was about reaching a point in space-time where your consciousness could expand enough to perceive us. The identical Earth, the multiple crews, the merging of realities. These were necessary steps in helping you comprehend existence as we experience it. Dr. Novak's scientific mind grappled with the implications. You're saying that everything, every planet, every star, every possible universe, exists in a state of quantum superposition until consciousness observes it. So, yes, came the reply, but even that is a simplification. Consciousness itself exists in superposition. You are not individuals experiencing reality. You are focal points of universal consciousness, experiencing itself from multiple perspectives simultaneously. The revelation hit them with the force of a supernova. Their entire understanding of existence had been based on a fundamental misconception. They weren't human beings experiencing consciousness. They were consciousness experiencing being human. The duplicate crews, Lisa realized, they weren't copies. They were probability waves made visible, different versions of the same consciousness, experiencing slightly different iterations of reality. And the empty city, Emma added, it wasn't empty at all. It was waiting to be populated by consciousness, existing in a state of pure potential, until observed. The alien presence confirmed these realizations, but there was more. They had been chosen for this revelation for a specific reason. Humanity stood at a crucial junction point in its development, a moment where it could either remain locked in its limited perception of reality or expand into a greater understanding of existence. Your species approaches a threshold, the presence communicated. Your technology, your consciousness, your understanding of quantum mechanics, all are converging toward a point of transformation. We have existed in this state since what you would call the beginning of time, waiting for other consciousnesses to evolve enough to join us in full awareness. Commander Thompson, his individual identity, now barely distinguishable from the collective consciousness of his crew, grasped the magnitude of what was being offered. You want us to be the bridge, he realized, to help humanity transition from limited individual consciousness to this. Yes, the presence confirmed, but such a transition carries great risk. Not all consciousness is ready to expand beyond its current limitations. Some would be destroyed by the attempt. Others would retreat into deeper isolation, forever losing the chance for expansion. The crew understood then why they had been chosen. Their mission, their training, their very personalities had been selected not just for space exploration, but for this moment of ultimate revelation. They were to be the first humans to fully comprehend the true nature of reality, and to decide whether humanity was ready to face this truth. But with this understanding came a terrible choice. The alien presence made it clear. They could return to Earth with this knowledge and begin the process of preparing humanity for its next evolutionary step. Or they could retreat from this expanded awareness, returning to their limited but safe perception of reality. Either choice would have profound consequences, not just for themselves, but for the entire human species. And as they contemplated their options, the very fabric of reality seemed to hold its breath, waiting for their decision. The decision to attempt an escape came not from any single crew member, but emerged from their collective consciousness like a survival instinct. Despite the profound truth they had learned about reality's nature, something deeply human within them recoiled from the idea of remaining in this state of expanded awareness. "We're not ready," all versions of Commander Thompson thought simultaneously. "Humanity isn't ready." The alien presence registered their decision with what might have been disappointment, or perhaps it had already observed this outcome across infinite probability streams. Either way, the process of extracting themselves from this expanded state of consciousness proved far more challenging than any of their previous training could have prepared them for. "We need to reconstitute our individual identities," Dr. Novak theorized, his thoughts echoing across their shared consciousness. "Find the quantum wave function that represents our original state." But which version was original? The multiple crews had merged into a singular awareness, their memories and experiences blending into a complex tapestry of possible realities. Separating themselves meant choosing a single thread from this infinite weave. Lisa discovered that focusing on specific memories helped solidify her individual identity. "The moment before launch," she projected to the others. "Focus on that exact second. It's the last moment we were definitively ourselves." The process was excruciating. Each crew member had to deliberately forget the infinite possibilities they could now perceive, had to willingly narrow their consciousness back to the limited perspective of a single human mind. It felt like trying to force an ocean back into a drinking glass. The alien presence didn't actively resist their efforts, but its very nature made their task more difficult. Reality around them continued to shift and merge, showing them glimpses of all possible outcomes. They saw versions of themselves succeeding in their escape, failing catastrophically, choosing to stay, evolving into something beyond human, all happening simultaneously. "Hold on to each other," Commander Thompson ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos of overlapping realities. "We came as a crew, we leave as a crew." They formed a physical chain, though even this simple action took immense concentration as their bodies existed in multiple states simultaneously. Michael's instruments, now showing readings that defied the laws of physics, became their anchor to conventional reality. Olivia, her consciousness still partly merged with the alien presence, made a crucial discovery. "The simulation isn't just around us," she realized. "It's within us. We have to reject it at the quantum level." Emma, drawing on her understanding of atmospheric sciences, found the metaphor they needed. "Think of consciousness like pressure systems," she explained. "We're currently in a high-pressure state of expanded awareness. We need to create a low-pressure system of limited consciousness to get pulled back into..." The crew began the painstaking process of quantum rejection. One by one, they focused their will on denying the infinite possibilities they could perceive, forcing their consciousness to accept the limitations of human perception. It was like deliberately choosing to go blind, to forget everything they had learned about the true nature of reality. The city around them started to stabilize as their perception narrowed. The multiple versions of the Odyssey collapsed into a single ship. The endless iterations of themselves merged into 6 distinct individuals. Reality, in all its infinite possibility, began to lock into a single limited version. But the alien presence had one final revelation for them. "You cannot completely forget," it communicated. "The knowledge will remain, buried in your quantum structure. It will influence your decisions, your dreams, your understanding of reality, even if you can no longer consciously access it. As their escape neared completion, they experienced one last moment of expanded consciousness. In it, they saw the full impact of their choice, how their decision would ripple through humanity's development, creating subtle changes that would eventually lead their species toward a different kind of enlightenment. Slower, perhaps, than what the aliens had offered, but more natural, more distinctly human. The final separation came suddenly. One moment they were aware of infinite possibilities. The next they were 6 individual humans, standing in what appeared to be a perfectly normal Las Vegas casino, their bodies solid, their minds their own. But their escape was not yet complete. They still had to get back to their ship, break free from the planet's influence, and return to Earth, all while carrying knowledge that could either elevate or destroy human civilization. The price of their escape became clear as they raced back to the Odyssey. Each crew member began experiencing symptoms of quantum destabilization. Their recent exposure to infinite consciousness had left them partially untethered from conventional reality. They were like deep-sea divers suffering from decompression sickness, except the pressure they'd escaped was that of expanded consciousness itself. Dr. Novak was the first to realize the implications. "Our physical forms are struggling to maintain quantum coherence," he explained, watching his hand temporarily blur into multiple probability states. "We need something to anchor us permanently in this reality." The alien presence, though no longer directly communicating with them, had left them with an understanding of what needed to be done. To fully return to their limited human consciousness, each crew member would need to sacrifice something fundamental to their identity, a core memory or ability that tied them to their expanded awareness. Commander Thompson made his decision first. "I'm letting go of the command codes," he announced. The complex sequences that gave him control over the Odyssey systems had been part of his identity for years. As he deliberately erased them from his mind, his form stabilized, becoming fully solid once again. Lisa sacrificed her perfect spatial awareness, the gift that had made her an exceptional pilot. She would still be able to fly, but never again with the intuitive perfection she had possessed before. The loss brought tears to her eyes, but her quantum stability returned. Dr. Novak chose to forget key elements of his research, breakthrough insights that had defined his career. Emma gave up her ability to perceive atmospheric patterns with mathematical precision. Michael sacrificed his perfect recall of technical specifications. Olivia lost her intuitive understanding of communication patterns. Each loss was personal, profound, and permanent. These weren't just memories or skills they were giving up, but fundamental parts of themselves, yet with each sacrifice they became more firmly anchored in conventional reality. The process was made more difficult by the knowledge that they weren't just giving up abilities, they were deliberately choosing to accept a more limited version of themselves. They had seen what they could become, had experienced existence at its fullest potential, and were now choosing to turn away from that potential. "It's not just for us," Commander Thompson reminded them as they made their sacrifices. "It's for all of humanity. We're choosing a path that gives our species the chance to evolve naturally, to reach enlightenment on our own terms." The final test came as they approached the Odyssey. The ship existed in multiple quantum states, versions where it was damaged, versions where it was perfect, versions where it had never landed. They would need to choose one reality and stick to it, knowing their choice would determine not just their fate, but the very nature of the story that would be told about their mission. "We take it as we left it," Commander Thompson decided. "No improvements, no changes. We accept the reality we came from, with all its flaws and limitations." As they boarded the ship, each crew member felt the weight of their sacrifices. They were no longer the same people who had landed on this mirror Earth. They were both more and less more aware of reality's true nature, yet less capable of fully perceiving it. The launch sequence began, but one final sacrifice remained, one that would test their humanity to its limits and ensure that the knowledge they carried could never be used to force humanity's premature evolution. The return to Earth marked the beginning of the crew's greatest challenge, living with the echoes of what they had experienced, while maintaining the fiction of a more mundane mission. Their official report told a carefully constructed story. Mechanical failures, sensor glitches, and inconclusive data about a potentially habitable planet. But the truth lived in their dreams, in the spaces between thoughts, in the moments when reality seemed to flicker at the edges of their perception. Each crew member dealt with the aftermath in their own way, forever changed by their encounter with infinite consciousness. Commander Thompson retired from active duty, taking a teaching position at the Space Academy. His lectures were popular, though students often commented on his peculiar emphasis on the philosophical aspects of space exploration. He would sometimes pause mid-sentence as if hearing distant echoes of other possibilities, other versions of himself teaching other lessons, in other realities. Lisa found she could still pilot with above-average skill, but the loss of her perfect spatial awareness left an ache that never fully healed. She channeled this loss into developing new flight training programs, helping others achieve excellence through methodology rather than intuition. At night, she drew complex diagrams of mathematical patterns she could no longer fully comprehend. Dr. Novak threw himself into new research, approaching old problems from radically different angles. His colleagues noticed that he seemed to have lost interest in certain promising lines of inquiry, but his new work, while less conventionally brilliant, contained subtle insights that would influence scientific thinking for generations to come. Emma developed a reputation for predicting weather patterns through what she called holistic observation. Though she had lost her precise mathematical understanding, she had retained a deeper, more intuitive grasp of how systems interacted. Her new approaches to climate science, while less technically rigorous than her previous work, opened up entirely new ways of understanding Earth's atmosphere. Michael's work with technical systems became more innovative, if less traditionally efficient. Having lost his perfect recall of specifications, he developed new ways of approaching problems that didn't rely on rote knowledge. His solutions often seemed to come from left field, as if he were drawing on understanding from some other source. Olivia found herself developing new protocols for space communication that seemed to operate on principles she couldn't fully articulate. Her papers on intuitive information theory were initially dismissed as too abstract, only to be rediscovered years later as quantum computing began to emerge. The crew maintained contact with each other through the years, meeting annually at a small diner in Las Vegas, a location chosen with ironic awareness of its significance. They never discussed their final sacrifice directly. The decision to fragment their memories of the alien presence's true nature, dividing the knowledge between them so that no single person held enough information to force humanity's premature evolution. Each carried a piece of the puzzle, a fragment of the infinite understanding they had briefly shared. Only together could they fully remember the truth, and they had sworn never to reunite those pieces. It was their final gift to humanity, the chance to develop naturally, to reach enlightenment through its own journey of discovery. Their children and grandchildren would sometimes notice oddities, moments when their parents or grandparents seemed to respond to things that hadn't happened, or spoke about reality as if it were more fluid than solid. These moments were dismissed as eccentricities, the quirks of aging space explorers who had seen too much of the cosmos, but their influence spread subtly through human civilization. Their altered perspectives, their new approaches to old problems, their seemingly intuitive understandings, all planted seeds that would slowly guide humanity towards its own unique path to enlightenment. Years later, as quantum computing began to reveal the malleable nature of reality, as consciousness research started to hint at the interconnected nature of all things, their sacrifices began to make sense. Humanity was beginning to discover its own way toward the truth they had been shown, advancing at its own pace, maintaining its identity while expanding its understanding. And sometimes on clear nights when the stars seemed particularly bright, each member of the crew would look up at the cosmos and remember not the full truth, which they had sacrificed, but the feeling of it. The knowledge that reality was far more wonderful and terrifying than humanity yet understood, and that their greatest achievement had been giving their species the time to discover this on its own terms. In the end, their mission had been more successful than anyone could know. They had not just explored a distant planet, they had navigated the very nature of consciousness itself, charting a course for humanity's future that balanced advancement with authenticity, progress with preservation of what made us human. The truth of their journey lived on, not in official records or scientific papers, but in the subtle changes they had introduced to human civilization. Changes that would ripple through generations, guiding humanity towards its destiny among the stars, one small step at a time.